Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and brothers and sisters. Um, at the beginning of every show, I say what I just said. I said good afternoon. I guess I should also say Happy New Year because this is the first show of 2022. But things are really not good, and there's not a whole lot to be happy about. I mean, we're dealing with an explosion of crime, not because people are monsters, but because of societal conditions. We're dealing with global warming and crazy weather because humans are crazy. And we're dealing with COVID once again because humans are crazy and refuse to do what needs to be done in order to correct the situation. Um, so I guess I really shouldn't be saying good afternoon. I guess I shouldn't be saying Happy New Year. But on the other hand, I guess I should be because things seem to be so depressing and so demeaning and so negative. Maybe we should try to find and then accentuate the positive. So, despite all of the negativity in the world today, let's fight and let's fight to make things right. Let's fight to make things better. So, having said that, and having given myself a pep talk for the last, I don't know, 60 seconds, let me restart the show by saying, good afternoon, everybody, by saying, Happy New Year, everybody, and let's try to make a bad situation a good situation. I can tell you this for the next 60 minutes, it will be a good situation because it's going to be a good show. This is yours truly, attorney Michael Cord, aka Michael X, aka the angriest black man in America. I host the show the first Friday of every month, and today being Friday, January 7th, 2022, I'm doing this month's show. And in connection with this month's show, we're going to focus on two topics. One is the Rosewood Massacre. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a couple minutes. And number two is the way we frame the topic for number two is this, presented as a question. Is the school district of Philadelphia educating our children and safeguarding their health? Based on what I say no to both. But we'll have two experts on today who'll let you know the answer to those questions and the answers to other questions here at TV Courtroom. Having said that, let me say this. I'm going to spend the next 5-6 minutes or so, maybe a little longer. Then at about 3:45, what I'll do is jump right into our second topic. Once again, that topic poses the question: is the school district of Philadelphia educating our children and safeguarding their health? So at about 3:45 to maybe 4:15, we'll be discussing that topic with our two guests. I will introduce them shortly. But right now, and then in the final several minutes of the show, let me talk about something called the Rosewood Massacre. And I want to talk about it because it's timely and because you don't know anything about it. It's timely because it happened exactly 99 years ago. It began on January 1, 1923. It lasted for an entire week, January 7th, 1923. If you do the math, that's 1923. This is 2022. This thing happened exactly 99 years ago. And let me read to you what I posted on social media because it encapsulates everything I want to share with you. Here's what I wrote: Rosewood, Florida. Never forget, always avenge. Once again, Rosewood, Florida. Never forget, always avenge. Exactly 99 years ago, from January 1, 1923 until January 7th, 1923, devils brought their fire from hell and for 7 consecutive days burned down churches, homes, and businesses in the prosperous and self-sustaining black economic heaven called Rosewood in Florida. They also lynched 150 of the town's 700 black men, women, and children, and raped many of the black women and girls. But not one, I repeat, not one of the white arsonists, murderers, or rapists was ever arrested. You might say, well, why did the white folks do it? They did it because they were evil people. I'm not saying that all white people are evil, but I will say those white folks that slaughtered that Rosewood community exactly 99 years ago were the definition of evil, the personification of evil. That's why I say they were devils who brought their fire from hell and for 7 consecutive days burned down an entire black community and murdered over 150 human beings, raped many of them. So we need to know this. And that's why I started at the beginning by saying never forget, always avenge, because this stuff is important. I mean, think about it. This was 1923. My grandfather was born in 1913. I'll never forget. I was a kid and happened to see my grandfather. He was alive at the time. I saw his birth certificate. He was born in 1913. My grandfather could have been 10 years old in Rosewood, Florida, and would have been one of the victims who was murdered. Now think about this. You might not be my age. You might not be in your 50s. You might even be in your 40s. But let's say you're in your 30s or 40s. That means your great-grandparents could be around. That means your grandparents' parents. You know how much you love your grandmother? You know how much you love your grandfather? Well, they obviously had parents. Their parents, and certainly their grandparents, could have been victimized here. This didn't happen in the 1600s when slavery began in America. This didn't happen in the 1700s when this country was founded. This didn't even happen in the 1800s when blacks allegedly got their freedom with the 13th Amendment. This happened in the 1900s. This is in the lifetime of your parents for some of you, your grandparents for others of you, and your great-grandparents for most of you. Can you imagine? You might say, well, what was the deal? The deal is racist white folks with guns. That's what it was. And these black folks in Rose at the time, they didn't go around begging for handouts. They weren't homeless. They didn't seek welfare. No disrespect to those who struggle financially and need all that, but these black folks said, hey, white folks ain't giving us nothing, so we'll do for self. And they built this economic heaven in Rosewood, Florida, and the devils burnt it down. And not one of them, not one of those white men, not one of those white women who were involved in this horrific arson, this horrific murders, these horrific rapes, not one of them not only was not convicted, but wasn't even arrested. My grandfather passed away about 10 years ago. Technically, there could be some people alive today who were involved in that Rosewood massacre. Let's say there was somebody 10, 12, 15 years old at the time. They'd be very old, but they could be walking around today. And certainly the children of many of these people who did this horrific thing in 1923, their children are alive today walking around. That's why I say never forget, always avenge. And by the way, avenge and revenge are not synonymous. Revenge means to do the same bad thing to you that you did to me. It's not in the nature of black people to enslave folks like that and brutalize folks like that and murder folks like that. That's not an African thing. So it's not even in my nature to do that to white folks. So I don't say revenge, I say avenge. Revenge focuses on the victimizer. Avenge focuses on and raises up and defends the victim. So when I say never forget, always avenge, I'm saying tell the story of these black folks in Rosewood. Tell the story so that you know what's going on. Tell the story so that your children know what's going on. You know, we in the African community, we don't believe in death. We believe that people go to the other side. That's why we pour libation. And the key to pouring libation is to say the names of the victims. Because we in the African community believe that death is the absence of memory. Let me repeat that. Death is the absence of memory. So as long as we remember these 150 people from Rosewood, and to the extent that we know their names, we call them out. And there's one name in particular, Sylvester Carrier. If you don't research this incident, just Google Rosewood Massacre. At least watch the dramatic film done by John Singleton in 1997. John Singleton produced and directed a film entitled Rosewood, and it featured Don Cheadle. And Don Cheadle played the role of Sylvester Carrier. And Sylvester Carrier was a proud and dignified Black man who not only had a nice house in Rosewood, he had a piano. And one of the things that the white folks did when they began the assault on the Rosewood community, they said, let's go to that N-word's house and get his piano. They were not only brutal racists, but they were jealous, brutal racists. They were like, how can we allow this N-word to be so dignified that he has this fancy house with a piano in it? So one of the first things we're going to do when we go on the attack is we're going to go there. It's really funny. I'm doing this show today, as I always do, well, since the COVID thing broke out, from my home studio. And it's amazing how the ancestors work. I have a poster of Malcolm X to my left. And as I'm talking about never forget, always avenge, look at where the sun rays came. The sun rays came. I didn't script this. I had no idea that the sun, of all the places the sun could be beaming through in my condo, right to my studio, of all the places, it could be in my face. It could be on my nameplate. It could be anywhere in the screen, but look at where it is. It's on Malcolm's face. If that's not a message, then nothing is. Wow. Powerful. And speaking of powerful, it's really interesting because white folks will blame Black folks for being in need, for being poverty stricken. They'll say that we're welfare queens and welfare kings, and we're dependent on the federal government for a handout. And they condemn us for that. But then when we do our own thing and do for self, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, they destroy that thing. So if we beg them for handouts, they attack us. If we do our own thing for self, they attack us. Like they did for this prosperous Black community called Rosewood in Florida. Research this, find out about it. And also watch that great film called Rosewood by John Singleton. He made it back in 1997. And, you know, it takes poetic license and it adds some stuff, but it's a great dramatic film. I will tell you, though, it's going to get you angry. But sometimes you ought to be angry, which is why I call myself the angriest Black man in America. Because as James Baldwin taught us, to be Black and conscious in America is to be in a constant state of rage. And in about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to go to the second segment of today's show. We're going to come back in the final 10 minutes or so to the Rosewood thing. But for the next half hour, we're going to be talking to two guests. But before we get to them, give me 1 minute to wrap up the first part of my discussion about the Rosewood Massacre. So please, folks, because this horrific massacre happened exactly 99 years ago from January 1, 1923 until January 7, 1923, it's timely. Today is January 7th of 2022. So Google Rosewood, Florida, 1923, and also watch the great dramatic film by John Singleton from 1997 called Rosewood. And by the way, Don Cheadle does a great job as the protagonist. And one of the things I want to say before we get to our guest and get to the second topic is this. It wasn't just Rosewood that was a prosperous Black community. And I'm talking about just after the turn of the century. I'm talking about the 1920s. Black folks have been doing their thing independently and succeeding despite being attacked and condemned by white folks. It's not just Rosewood. We all know about Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and how that prospered up until the early 1920s when devils attacked it. But it's not just Rosewood in Florida. It's not just Tulsa in Oklahoma. What about Seneca Village in New York? Google it. From the 1820s until the late 1850s. Think about that. That's before the 13th Amendment and Black folks doing their thing. But it wasn't just Rosewood in Florida. It wasn't just Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It wasn't just Seneca Village in New York. Let me go through a list and then we'll get to our guest. What about New Philadelphia, Illinois, from the 1830s to the 1880s? What about Weeksville, New York, from the 1830s to the 1930s, about 100 years? What about Davis Bend, Mississippi, from the 1860s to the 1880s? What about Buffalo Bayou in Texas from 1865 to the mid-1920s? What about the Central and Vine Street community of Knoxville, Tennessee from the mid-1870s to the 1920s? What about the LeDroit Park Howard University neighborhood of Washington, D.C. from the 1890s to about 1920? What about Allensworth, California from 1908 till about 1915? What about Black Dime, New Mexico from 1908 to the 1920s? What about East St. Louis, Illinois from 1910 to 1917? These were all independent, economically viable, extremely profitable, and wealthy and dignified Black communities until white people shut them down. So let me wrap up the first part of today's segment by saying Rosewood, Florida, January 1, 1923 to January 7, 1923. Never forget, always avenge. As we wrap up today's show, in about 40 minutes or so, I'm going to add some more stuff to what I shared with you. But right now, I want to go to our second topic, and I want to feature two great guests. And when you talk about the plight of Black folks in America, you're obviously talking about the plight of children in America, first and foremost, because that's the future. All of us in our 50s and 60s and 70s and 40s and whatever, we're going to be around for a while, but those who are babies are going to be around much longer. So we have to lay the foundation. And today we're going to talk about how we best lay that foundation by dealing with the question of, is the school district educating our children and safeguarding their health? That's the question. So who's going to answer that? Well, we have two folks that are going to answer that. We have Dana Carter and we have Dr. Robin Cooper. Now, I'm going to have both of them tell you a little more about themselves because if I read their bios, it'd take about 2 or 3 days. And we don't have 2 or 3 days to read their impressive bios. So let me jump right in by saying, in regard to Dana Carter, she's not only a local educator, but is also an international agitator. And she's going to explain what I mean when I say that. She also hosts a show on my radio segment called You Gotta Love the Children to Teach the Children. She's going to talk about her role in making sure that children, primarily Black and brown, but all children, get properly educated. That's one of our two guests. We also have Dr. Robin Cooper. And there's so much to say about Dr. Robin Cooper. Let me just start out by saying that you talk about somebody who is extremely credentialed, somebody who has a resume that is certainly one to be proud of, has many Pennsylvania professional certifications, has served as a principal, currently serves as the president and principal officer of something called CASA, the Commonwealth Association of School Administrators. In addition, serves as the diversity commissioner, teaches and taught at Cheyney University as an adjunct professor, has won numerous awards. I mean, just so much I can say about Dr. Cooper, but let me just start by giving Dana Carter the microphone first to spend about 30 seconds talking about her impressive bio, and then we're going to have Dr. Robin Cooper spend about 30 seconds highlighting her. Is first up, Dana Carter, who I call a local educator and an international agitator. Dana, the microphone is yours.
Yes, I agree. Save the best for last. I'm trying to be like Dr. Cooper when I grow up. So I'm excited to hear her speak. Hello, everyone. My name is Dana Carter. I have been an educator in Philadelphia since 2001. I taught overseas. I taught in charter schools. I took a break from teaching in the school district of Philadelphia, and I taught in Abu Dhabi for 2 years. So that was an amazing experience. I try to lend my help here in Philadelphia, eliminating racial and social justice obstacles in education, as well as lend my hand in Ontario, Canada. It's an organization called Parents of Black Children. I try to help out there where I can, but my main focus is to start as much trouble as possible in Philadelphia for the sake of the children of Philly.
And when you say start as much trouble as possible, that's perfect, because it's all about starting good trouble. Having said that, we're going to shift gears a little bit and turn it over to Dr. Robin Cooper to spend about 30 seconds telling us a little bit about herself. And just so folks know, when I have guests like Dana Carter and like Dr. Cooper, I want them to talk about their background, because I want the audience to know that they know what they're talking about. They didn't just Google some stuff last night and come on TV today. They got some real academic cred. Dr. Cooper, the microphone is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I am Dr. Robin Cooper. I have served in the capacity as teacher, assistant principal, administrative assistant to cluster leader, which is akin to an assistant superintendent. I have served as principal for approximately 17 sitting years and approximately 5 years in this position as the Teamsters 502 CASA, which stands for Commonwealth Association of School Administrators. I represent administrators in the state of Pennsylvania for the school district of Philadelphia. Most unions don't have an administrators union. And so in that, we are unique, and we really work with teachers and everybody else, with our other union stakeholders, to ensure that our children receive a quality education. And I definitely want to say, I believe if I could get a quality education from the public school system, so can all of the children who are in the system today.
Very well said. Thank you, Dr. Cooper. Let's go back to Dana Carter. The question for today's segment is this: is the school district educating our children and safeguarding their health? I mean, there's so many places we can go with that question, but for about 5 minutes, Dana, start out answering it, and then we'll turn it over to Dr. Cooper. But if somebody posed that question to you, Dana, is the school district educating our children and safeguarding their health? 2 parts.
I would tell them first that there were 2,992 children infected with COVID-19 in Philadelphia between the days 12/29 and 1/4. Those infections took place the week before if they were testing positive during those days. These are school-age children. So if we're talking about, is the school district safeguarding the health of the students? With only 92 schools closed out of about 300, I would say no. We are at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in Philadelphia, in this country. And I believe that the only remedy in order to get these cases under control is to close the schools. And the school district of Philadelphia, in my opinion, is not taking enough initiative in order to save the lives of Black children, Black and brown children, who are the majority of the students in the school district of Philadelphia. So I believe that they need that first in order to educate the kids. So the overall process of being educated is being interrupted because of the mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic and what the school district of Philadelphia should do in order to maintain a level of consistency for the students and staff. So I'm going to have to say no and no, but I agree with Dr. Cooper. I am a product of the school district of Philadelphia, and I believe this is why I fight so hard. I'm a product of Philly schools. All of my favorite teachers were school district of Philadelphia teachers. I started off in Catholic school, but 3rd grade to 12th, I went to school district of Philadelphia schools. And look at what happened. Look at what it produced. It produced me. It produced a fighter. It produced somebody out here that's going and fighting for the children. So it is possible that students can enter the school district of Philadelphia and absolutely meet success. All of my friends and my family graduated from school district of Philadelphia schools for the most part, and they are all successful individuals. So what we are trying to do is repeat what we had in the school district of Philadelphia, make sure that we have teachers who look like the children. The school district of Philadelphia teacher and student population does not, the demographics don't mirror each other. So we definitely need to make our teaching force more diverse so they can meet the needs of the students. But before we do all that, we need to make sure that our children and our staff members are as healthy as possible. And there's no way for them to be as healthy as possible in the school district of Philadelphia buildings currently. So that's the long part of the answer. I hope
Well, actually, that was pretty short because we're going to come back to you. I want to go to Dr. Cooper now and pose the same question. Is the school district educating our children and safeguarding their health? But Dr. Cooper, before you answer that, you did kind of touch on CASA, but I really want people to appreciate what that is and what it does and what you can do in your role as president to answer those questions. And if those questions are no, they're not educating our children, they're not safeguarding their health, what can you and CASA do about it?
So firstly, I need to say, there's so many great things about Philadelphia School District, and I just love the Philadelphia School District and our families and our stakeholders and all of the partners. Right now, we're not doing the very best that we can do by our children because we make decisions that are done in a vacuum and are reactive in nature as opposed to being proactive. So I think when you do things reactively, it says what you think about your stakeholders. It says what you think about parents, their ability to work and so forth. When you make snap decisions and you impose on the parents those snap decisions at the last minute, then they really can't do the best that they can by their children. So when we look at just everything that's going on with COVID, when we look at everything that's going on with teacher vacancies, when we look at everything that's going on, when you are in a district that really doesn't hear, they can hear all of the concerns of the stakeholders, but when there is no response to those stakeholders that show that they actually heard or there's a tone deafness, then I don't think that we're doing everything that we can do by our student population. So for example, when I said I'm the president of the administrators union, that means we represent principals, assistant principals, climate managers, early childhood coordinators, you name it, we represent it. If you are a first level hearing officer, we represent those leaders in the district, facility area coordinators, all of those folks. And at this point, although these are the people that keep the schools together, we have had no power, no authority in anything as it relates to some of the serious issues, mainly what we're confronted with right now, the COVID-19, around testing, around, what to do, what's the threshold for when people have COVID-19, this Omicron variant. So right now we are not doing nearly the best that we can do. And I just really want to reiterate, yes. People hear these things and they think bad school system.
Yes.
The school system is not bad. Folks are doing, again, I am a proud product of Philadelphia, was born and raised in North Philadelphia, and the school system worked for me. I got my education all the way through my doctorate from Pennsylvania schools, and I'm extremely proud of that. And our children can do the absolute same, but at the very top levels, they need people who understand Philadelphia. They need people who actually care about our children. And when we're talking equity, they have to make sure that they're living that equity piece.
You laid it out perfectly, but let me throw it back to you and put you on the spot by saying, okay, let's say you were the decision maker. Let's say you were in charge. Let's say you were the superintendent, the city council president, and the mayor all rolled up in one. What would you do now?
What would I do now? Well, firstly, I would have a meeting with my stakeholders and actually hear them out. And if all of my stakeholders are saying almost the same thing, that is different from what I am saying. And if my voice is in the minority, maybe I need to look at some of the pieces of the folks who are actually out there in the job, doing the job every single day. So it's a difference when you have not been a practitioner and you really don't know what goes on in schools. So if there are, for example, just the way COVID has the numbers are up. Everything has increased. So it's very difficult to run schools. So with that, there will not be anyone at central headquarters that would be allowed to work remotely at home. If the schools, I was always taught as a teacher, as an assistant principal, as a principal, if the schools are hurting, that's why you have those area offices, and that's why you have central office. So if we're hurting and can't run the school, we can't run the schools. So that means that there should not be anyone working remotely that's non-represented. They should be in the schools fighting the same battle that we fight. If we are at war, all hands should be on deck. So there are a lot of things that I would do differently. First of all, I would be in the fight with the people, not going to schools with clipboard and paper to write down things as if it's business as usual. We are in crisis mode, and when you're in a crisis, you need all hands on deck. So first and foremost, my hands would be in the fight.
Very well said. And before we go back to local educator and international agitator Dana Carter, Dr. Cooper, if folks wanted to contact you, reach out to you, follow you, is there a website? Is there an email? Is there social media, phone? How can people find out more about you and your organization?
My email is CASA, C-A-S-A, President 502 at gmail.com. And we have a Teamsters page. It's Teamsters Local 502 CASA. They could go there. We have that Facebook page, and we have Teamsters Local 502 Instagram.
And at some point, when we come back, because we're going to question Dana Carter, you're really modest and humble, because when I read your bio, I understand that you made history in your role as president. And you had to fight some demons amongst you in order to get to where you got. Absolutely. And you fought them and won. I mean, your bio reads like a movie. You ought to make it a movie because it seems that exciting and dramatic. So we want to talk a little bit about that. But Dana, and by the way, those who want to hear more from Dana Carter, she's on every Saturday at 2 p.m. on WURD 96.1 FM. That's WURD 96.1 FM. And thanks to our producer, Roland, you can see it right there. Every Saturday, I host the show from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. But at the 2 o'clock hour, we allow Dana Carter to take over and host a segment called You Gotta Love the Children to Teach the Children. Dana, let me pose the same question to you that I posed to Dr. Cooper. And by the way, let me just say to both of you women, I just love it when there are angry Black women who know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, because there's that whole stereotype of Black women twisting their lip and turning their head and flipping their hair, and that's all good. That's the surface. But if you got some substance underneath that, go ahead and do your Black woman thing, but bring the fire with it, bring the substance, and both of you are just that. I mean, for little Black boys and little Black girls to see women like you in position of authority, that's absolutely wonderful. You both got the form and the substance. Let me turn it over to Dana. Dana, let me put you on the spot. I just appointed you superintendent, mayor, city council president, union, teachers union president, all that rolled up in one. What are you going to do?
Shut it down. I'm going to shut everything down. I'm going to shut it down. I will send out notification to the parents today and to the teachers and all staff that we are going virtual for the next 2 weeks. I understand that this is going to make individuals upset. But
Dana, I'm glad you said that. I want you to elaborate because I'm saying you probably will get some pushback from parents who want their kids in school instead of at home. We touched on that during the radio show, but go ahead, keep talking.
Right. I believe that parents want their child alive more than they want their child to go to school. So people have to understand the severity of this virus. Last week, I presented the data for the number of ICU beds that were available for pediatric children. There were only 15 beds available as of December 31st, 2021. And I just checked back in with my data person a few days ago, and that number has dropped down to 10. So as of 2 days ago, there were 10 pediatric ICU beds available for children in Philadelphia. CHOP tracks this data. There are only but 2 or 3 pediatric hospitals in Philadelphia, so it's not like they have to gather that information from a whole lot of hospitals. They have the information there and available for you all to look at. In addition to that, at that time, COVID-19 was taking up 73% of the ICU cases in the pediatric units in Philadelphia. COVID-19 is putting the babies in pediatric ICU. Like, I mean, to think about a 5-year-old, 6, 7-year-old, your child on a ventilator when they could have been prevented by staying home. And let me explain to you how I'm going to prove this. See, I wish I wasn't so good at math. Last week, the numbers were 2,992 for children 5 to 18. The previous week was around 2,000, but that number had been doubling. It didn't double. It didn't double last week. It didn't go from 2,000 to 4,000. And the reason why it didn't do that is because the majority of the time those children were home. That number would have doubled if those kids were still in school. And I bet that when the data comes out from this week, that the number will remain the same, either 2,992 around that number, or it will drop, because this will be the number, the data coming in from the children when they were home during Christmas and winter vacation. I believe that the School District of Philadelphia understands that the COVID-19 numbers were under control back when they had the previous guidelines. Not only did they switch the guidelines to say that 3% previously, instead of 6 closures, closing down the school, they increased it to 3% of the school population. Philadelphia Department of Public Health just increased that 3% to 10% of the school population. It's going to take 10% of the school population in order to close down the school. Some of these schools got 3,000 kids. Some of these schools got 1,500 kids. So that means it's going to take 150. What are you doing out here to these people? This is, I mean, I get upset because you have these individuals sitting in these cushy jobs and they go home to their houses and their nice apartments on the parkway and all this other stuff. And they don't realize how the decisions that they're making impact the lives of people who look just like us. The individuals who are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 are Black and brown people, but the individuals who are making decisions for their lives are not, for the most part. Those aren't the individuals who are making the decisions for their lives. So I feel like it is a lack of compassion. It is a lack of empathy. It appears that it is a narcissistic way of controlling the School District of Philadelphia. I'm not saying that a narcissist is controlling it. I'm just saying, like, the way that it's controlled mirrors characteristics of a narcissist. There's no empathy. There is no looking out for anyone else. It just all seems to be about control and ego. I believe the School District of Philadelphia is very stubborn as a system. They understand that the school district needs to close, but they are piecemealing it, sending out notifications at 8 p.m., 11:30 p.m. when people are asleep, saying that schools are closed. How inconsiderate is that? People go to sleep. They have 5-year-olds, and people went to sleep knowing that, thinking that their schools were going to be open at 11 o'clock. They wake up in the morning, get ready to go to school, and the schools are closed. You are not giving your parents or teachers or administrators the respect that they need or time to plan. Can you just give them 24 hours? Just give them a day to plan. They're not even giving them that consideration. So sorry, dear counselor, because to get back to your question, I would shut it all down. And all those people who I just talked to you about, the teachers, the principals, the counselors, all of those individuals, that's who would be in my meeting, especially the parents and the community leaders. Enon shut down. Pastor Waller was like, no, y'all not coming up in here. He needs to be in the meeting. He needs to talk to his members so he can empower his members to contact their elected officials or the school principal or Dr. Height and tell them to shut it down. This has to be a community organized effort. Last week, there was a local troublemaker, Chocolate One, who organized a student sick out for a School District of Philadelphia student.
I want you to talk about that because I did see some stuff on social media. What was that sick out and what happened? What is happening? Any blowback against the students? And after we get your response, we'll turn it over to Dr. Cooper.
I don't believe there was any blowback. So officially, the School District of Philadelphia teachers and administrators cannot take an official position about this student sync out. I mean, they can, but who feels like that backlash from the school district? So I basically am the face of this. So what I see is that the attendance dropped tremendously this week. Now, definitely could be due to COVID-19 numbers. Yeah. But when I was looking at the data that some principals were stating, one principal said I have 60 children out, 38 are due to COVID. I have a parent group of over 1,000 members. So when I put out this student sick out, they are the ones who carried it. My parent, not my mom or my dad, but a parent from my student group, my organizing group, made CNN national news. She was talking about, I forgot to tell you that, Mr. Court. She was talking about the stick out on CNN national news. Very proud of her. So my job is to play the background, kind of do the organizing and empower the parents to do whatever they need to do to take care of their kids. Because the administrators will get in trouble if they do it. The teachers will get in trouble if they do it. But the parents have the power, and they don't understand that. So we just have to empower the parents and make sure that they understand that they are the ones that are in control of their child's life. And if the School District of Philadelphia is not making the decisions to keep their child safe, then they need to make that decision for themselves.
Those of you who just tuned in, you're listening to the passion, the fire, the impressive and important information from Dana Carter, local educator and international agitator. Dana, what we're going to do, because we're running out of time, we're going to give you 3 minutes, the final 3 minutes now, to make your closing statement. Then we're going to give the last 7 minutes to Dr. Cooper to share with us whatever needs to be shared and highlighted. So, Dana, I want you to include your contact information, anything else you want to add for the next 3 minutes. And then the final 7 minutes will be Dr. Robin Cooper, who's going to share her wealth of information with you all and provide you all with some marching orders. Final 3 minutes for you, Dana Carter.
It's so funny that Mr. Court was talking like, Black women, they do the neck thing and their hair, but these women are different. And I came up here with the hair and the neck. I got it all. But yes, my name is Dana Carter. You can get with me on Twitter, Chocolate Girl Wonder. Shout out to Pete Rock, Chocolate Boy Wonder. You can get with me on Twitter. You can get with me on LinkedIn, Dana Carter on LinkedIn. I'm not really active on Facebook, but if you are a parent or an advocate or an activist for children, you should join my parent group. It's called Parents Organized for a Better School District of Philadelphia. I like to provide parents with resources and just policies and practices and things that they can do in order to make their experience in education as easy as possible in Philadelphia. So that's it. I'm always here to help as long as it is against white supremacy and for the historically oppressed. So if you need me, come and find me. I'm not that hard to find.
And Dana, thanks to you and thanks to our producer, Roland. He did include your contact information at the bottom of the screen so folks who might not have heard it could certainly see it. We're going to wrap things up with Dr. Robin Cooper. Dr. Robin Cooper is the president and principal officer of CASA. That's the Commonwealth Association of School Administrators. And she wears so many hats. We're going to wrap this thing up, giving her the final 7 minutes. And we want her to say whatever she wants to say, but included in that, Dr. Cooper, and you might have addressed it earlier, what you see as the biggest problem and the easiest solution. The biggest problem and the easiest solution, include that in your final 7 minutes.
I think the biggest problem is the fact that everyone knows we're administrators, so we want children in school because we know when they're not in school that there's going to be a major delay in learning. But let's be absolutely clear. Right now, safety preempts the teaching and the learning. So what we're trying to put out to the public, or what the school district is trying to put out to the public is, everything is okay. It's time for instructional rounds. It's time to do everything that, we typically do, but it's very difficult to do that when you don't have the staff nor the supports in place that should rightly be there. PPE testing is a big deal. I mean, PPE equipment is a big deal. We need to have the masks. We need the buildings deep cleansed. We need the proper equipment, because when we're saying that these masks like this, they don't work, we need to act. You're asking people to come to a job, to do a job, but you're not providing the appropriate PPE. So we're asking for the appropriate PPE to be there. The district will say it's there. Schools don't have what's necessary to be able to keep children safe. We need our children vaccinated. Well, where does that happen? Where does it occur? We need these testing sites. We need to know why did the threshold go from 3% to 10%? So are we really looking at safety, or is the health department so short-staffed that everybody is running ragged? But you don't make increases based on the short-staffedness. You really work to say, hey, as Philadelphians, let's come together and figure this out. But we don't put anybody's health at risk. It does. You cannot say bad educator because I don't want to catch COVID, or because you don't know what my personal health history is. So we need supports. We need people on the front lines. We need for all hands on deck. So that means that if people who are running and operating schools, if they are 100% out there in these schools, then that means that 440, no one should be home. No one should be working remotely. They need to be out to provide supports. That means that if it's not a teacher there, fill a classroom. But you cannot take and issue orders that you're not willing to follow yourself. So we're really concerned with the increase in this threshold because the numbers have risen dramatically. And we have to respect our parents and our communities by getting our information now and not waiting to the last minute. Everybody, almost all the stakeholders are saying the same thing. Despite everybody saying the same thing, the district is still moving as if there was no input given from all of these vast stakeholders in Philadelphia.
You have laid it out so well. I mean, I love the fact that both of you are what I call angry Black women. And I can say that because I'm an angry Black man. So when I say Black folks are angry, that's actually a compliment. Because if you're going through the stuff that Black folks have gone through in this country and you're not angry, it's something wrong with you. Let me do this. I know I said that we were going to hear the final words from Dana and the final words from Dr. Cooper, but I know there are people who are so impressed with you all. Please, I'm going to give you all final 30 seconds to repeat your contact information. And if it includes a phone number, please provide that. So we're going to ask Dana to repeat her contact information and then wrap things up with Dr. Cooper once again, repeating her contact information. Dana Carter.
Just to vet you back on your point, you know, the great James Baldwin said to be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a state of rage almost all of the time. So if you have people around here happy-go-lucky, right, just, you know, I think that they lack a sense of awareness. Not that you need to be angry, but you need to be aware. And if you're unaware, you know that ignorance is bliss. But if you are aware and you are conscious of the things that are going on in here and affecting our children, then you are outraged, just like us. So you can get with me again on Twitter, Chocolate Girl Wonder. My Facebook parent group is Parents Organized for a Better School District of Philadelphia. You can also email me at betterschoolsforphilly@gmail.com. You need somebody to come, you know, support your parent meeting, or you need some connections in the community. I'm always willing to put those meetings together and put those connections together. So get with me for the sake of the community. If we heal the schools, we will heal the city, and you know the city is sick, so we need to heal the schools.
Very well said. In full condition to that, you can catch Dana Carter, who hosts a segment called You Gotta Love the Children to Teach the Children, 2 p.m. every Saturday on WURD 96.1 FM. And we're going to hear the final words for about 30 seconds from Dr. Robin Cooper, the president of CASA. That's the Commonwealth Association of School Administrators. I love what you both said. I especially love what Dr. Cooper said when I put her on the spot and said, hey, you're the superintendent, you're the mayor, you're the city council president. What would you do? And she must have seen my notes because she knew the question was coming because she had the answer. Thoroughly impressive. A final 30 seconds, Dr. Cooper. How do folks follow you, get more information, contact you?
Listen, I think the reason why I knew how to answer the question is because we are thrown into situations every day, and every day we have to either sink or swim. Philadelphia administrators, they are going to swim. They're asking for lifelines. They're going to be out there. They're going to swim. They're going to do everything they can to make schools a safe haven. You have to be safe first in order to be able to teach. You can reach me at CASA President 502@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page, Teamsters Local 502 CASA, and an Instagram page, Teamsters Local 502 CASA. Twitter, the same. So we do ask for you to reach out, any questions, anything, or if you want to partner with CASA, because we definitely work with the community and we have not forgotten our purpose. We know that we work for the community.
Very well said by both of you, but more important, very well done, Dana Carter and Dr. Robin Cooper. Robin, we're going to steal you and have you as a guest on Dana's Sunday show. So check your schedule. Thank you both. Have a wonderful weekend and be safe. Having said that, folks, I'm going to wrap up today's show in about within the next 7 minutes, then we're out of here. But as you know, we had two topics today. The first one was the Rosewood Massacre, and the second one was the question we posed. Is the school district educating our children and safeguarding their health? You heard the question, and you heard the answer from two great activists and educators. Let me quickly go back to that first topic regarding Rosewood, because, you know, when I think about the hell that Black folks went through in America, I actually got to admit, I want revenge. You know, I want those people to feel the sting of hell that my ancestors felt. But I realize that that's not productive. That's not constructive. And that I'm not going to demean and debase myself by doing the horrific things to them that they did to us. I'm better than that. So instead of me seeking revenge, I seek to avenge. Revenge focuses on the victimizer to do to him the very same bad thing that he did to you. Whereas avenge focuses on the victim to raise that victim up and tell their story and to make sure that they, or at least their descendants, are protected, that their story is told, so that, as I say, never forget, always avenge. And when we talk about Rosewood, we're talking about something that happened exactly 99 years ago from where we stand today. And what I mean by that is it happened on January 1, 1923, lasted until January 7, 1923. Today is January 7, 2022. That means this thing happened exactly 99 years ago. And during that time, as I posted on social media, let me read it to you. Exactly 99 years ago, from January 1, 1923 until January 7, 1923, devils brought their fire from hell and for 7 consecutive days burned down churches, homes, and businesses in the prosperous and self-sustaining Black economic heaven called Rosewood in Florida. But that's not all they did. They also lynched 150 of the town's 700 Black men, women, and children, and raped many of the Black women and girls. But not one white arsonist, not one white murderer, not one white rapist was ever arrested. This happened in 1923. My grandfather was born in 1913. If you're in your 40s or 50s, that means your great-grandparents. That means your grandparents' parents. That means your grandparents' great-grandparents. We all know, those of us who are fortunate enough to still have our grandparents around, well, our grandparents, they had grandparents. And their grandparents could have gone through this hell. That's why the story must be told. Find out more about it. Just Google Rosewood Massacre 1923. And if you research from reputable sources, you'll get all the gory details. But you can also watch the film. I was almost going to call it a documentary. It wasn't a documentary. It was actually a Hollywood film, but it was well done. It was produced and directed by a Black man, John Singleton, back in 1997. And it's called Rosewood. You might be able to find it anywhere videos are shown online. Just go to Rosewood from 1997, produced and directed by John Singleton, and starring Don Cheadle. Don Cheadle plays the role of a proud and dignified Black man from Rosewood named Sylvester Carrier, who was well-educated, who had money, had a nice house, and had a grand piano in his house. And one of the first things the white folks did when they came to destroy Rosewood, they were looking for Sylvester Carrier's house because they were outraged that a black man could be as wealthy as he was, that a black man could be as dignified as he was, that a black man could be as educated as he was, and that a black man could have the audacity of owning a piano. Great film, Rosewood, 1997, done by John Singleton, featuring and starring Don Cheadle as Sylvester Carrier. Another thing I want to say before we wrap things up in about 2 minutes is this. We need to realize as black folks that slavery is not black history. Slavery interrupted black history. The first human beings on the planet were in Africa, the Nile Valley region of East Africa, 200,000 years ago. No disrespect, but Caucasians as we know them today didn't come into existence until about 30,000 years ago. So do the math. For about 170,000 years, there were nothing but black people and people of color on the planet. And during that time, they created math and science and algebra and calculus and geometry and the pyramids and astronomy and medicine and monotheism and all those great intellectual pursuits. And then fast forward to the 15th century, 1492 in particular, when Columbus realized that there were other peoples on the planet. They were people of color, and these were peaceful people. And he, being a vicious, brutal, genocidal bully, did his thing. And it was all downhill for black folks. And then we talk about here in what became America, 1619, the birth of American slavery in the Virginia colony, August 25, 1619. That takes us to 246 years up until December of 1865, the passage of the 13th Amendment. And we didn't really, but kind of sort of got our freedom, because if you read the 13th Amendment, it doesn't really say that black folks are free. It says slavery and involuntary servitude are hereby abolished, comma, except following conviction for a crime. So that created black codes, and black folks are since then suffering slavery by another name. But my point is, slavery is not black history. Slavery interrupted black history. We have a grand and glorious past. And despite that slavery thing, we had these wealthy black communities like Rosewood up until the 1920s. We had Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma from the 1910s to 1921. We had Seneca Village in New York in the mid 1800s, New Philadelphia, Illinois in the mid to late 1800s, Weeksville, New York from the mid to mid 1900s, mid 1800s to mid 1900s. We had Davis Bend, Mississippi from 1865 to the 1880s. We had Buffalo Bayou, Texas, 1865 to the mid 1920s. We have the Central and Vine Street community of Knoxville, Tennessee from the mid 1870s until 1919. We had the LaDroit Park / Howard University neighborhood of Washington, D.C. from the 1890s until 1919. We had the Allensworth, California community from 1908 to 1915. We had Black Dime, New Mexico from 1908 to the 1920s. We had East St. Louis, Illinois from 1910 to 1917. You notice that many of these ending dates are around 1915, 16, 17. What's the common denominator there? Well, the common denominator is the Red Summer, when white folks just went crazy on black folks and wealthy black communities. We run out of time today. I thank you all for tuning in. I thank our guests, Dana Carter and Dr. Robin Cooper. I certainly thank our producer, Roland, for making things roll so smoothly. Thank you all for tuning in. Be safe.